Hey guys, what's up? Emo Cat Dad here, hanging out with you, bringing you yet another edition of Emo Cat Dad Listens. If you're new here, then what I do is every day of 2024, I vow to check out a new band or artist. I check out 4 songs from across their discography, give you my initial thoughts on those songs, give you my ranking of the songs that I just checked out, and then of course my overall thoughts on the artist based on what I just heard. Tonight is Sunday, which means it's ladies' night. I grew up going to the Vans Warped Tour, not a whole lot of diversity on that lineup, so I vowed to do my part and check out a artist each and every Sunday that is either a female or a band that has female members. And as you can see right there, it's Scowl. Now, I first heard of Scowl, I believe, last year as an up-and-coming hardcore band that's kind of in that turnstile mode where it's hardcore, but it's still like alternative and pop tinged. I heard the singer on the Lead Singer Syndrome podcast with Shane of Silverstein. They played Psychic Dance Party, which was the self-titled track from the EP that they had just released. And I thought it was super chaotic and super fun, so I knew I had to dig deeper into this band. And then never had a reason to. Until today. You guys have been so kind, giving me tons of bands or artists that I need to check out. And thankfully, someone suggested Scowl, which put them back on my radar. And I knew that this had to be a Sunday's Ladies' Night choice. So what am I expecting from Scowl? Well, I'm expecting what I just said. Turnstile-ish hardcore. So hardcore, but with, pop vocals, maybe some cool, funky bass loops. Lots of alt and indie tinges. So that's what I'm expecting. Let's see if I get it. So it looks like Scowl's discography is basically a bunch of EPs. There is one album called a full length that does have 10 tracks, but most of them are very short. So it has a short running time, but looks like actually all these songs have short running time. So this might be a quick one. But in any event, we're going to start with their first EP called Scowl EP. And I checked out False Virtue. Okay, so this is a straight up hardcore song. I don't love the vocal delivery, if I'm being honest. But with it being a hardcore track, musically, this is at least in my wheelhouse. I would say there's some pop sensibility to it. Not necessarily in structure, because, like I said, straight up hardcore track. But some of the guitar work, it's not a generic run-of-the-mill hardcore song. It does have some of that softer influence, which I appreciate, of course. But don't worry, it still leans pretty heavily into the hardcore. Their follow-up EP came out the following year, in 2019. It was called Reality After Reality. And I checked out Retail Hell. Seriously? Over 40-second intro on a 1:39-second song? What are we doing here, Scowl? Again, pretty straight up hardcore track. I'd say even more hardcore than the last one. Lyrically, I think anyone that's ever worked in retail can appreciate this track and the lyrical content. And honestly, even if you didn't work in retail and you just work like a 9-to-5 you don't love, there's probably some parts of this that you can vibe with. So their debut album, How Flowers Grow, was released in 2021. And the first track on that album was called Bloodhound. It has the most streams, so that's what I'm listening to. Again, with the long intro. Scowl, we just talked about this. The outro of this track ruled, at least. So far, these 3 tracks are all pretty similar in style. It's hardcore, but a more accessible hardcore, but not exactly the turnstile vibes that I was expecting. This is still pretty harsh, and if I put it on for my mother, she would not like listening to it. Alright, and finally, like I mentioned last year, they released another EP called Psychic Dance Routine. I had checked out the self-titled track on that podcast, so I opted not to dig into it, although I really don't remember much about it other than thinking it's super chaotic and fun sounding. So I could have probably revisited, but I just opted for the first single that they released instead, called Opening Night. Plan. This is part of the plan. Okay, so the last three tracks, the vocals were all pretty hardcore. On this one, the vocals sound much better, both stylistically and production-wise. They're still hardcore in parts. Don't get me wrong, the hardcore vocals are still there. But there's also a lot of pop-style vocals and even, I guess, grunge-style vocals. Like I can picture Courtney Love in Hole singing some of these parts. Musically, this is more melodic hardcore, so this is more what I expected to get from the band. Lots of melody still, but still that hardcore edge to it. Really dug it. All right, those were the 4 tracks we checked out. Let's go ahead and rank them. Starting with number 1, Opening Night. This should be no surprise. I like songs that separate themselves, and this was by far the most different out of these 4 tracks. And the difference was a good way because it had a lot of pop sensibility to it. And for an Emo Cat Dad, I like pop. So Scowl gets a big thumbs up for this track. At number 2, I'll go False Virtue. For the sole reason that the intro wasn't stupidly long, unlike the other 2 tracks, especially compared to the runtime. You should not eat up like a third of your song with just like a musical intro. And they just kind of build up to it. So I don't need that. Like, do something interesting at least. At number 3, I'll go Bloodhound. That outro did save the song for me. Like I said, it had a super long intro, but so the other tracks. So when it comes down to comparing apples to apples, you go with which one tasted better. And that was Bloodhound. Retail Hell's at number 4. Usually lyrics play a much stronger role in choosing what gets where. And these were probably my favorite lyrics, just having worked in retail. But ultimately, I can't ignore the fact that these other songs just did more for me musically. All right. So, what are my overall thoughts on Scowl after listening to these tracks? Definitely not what I expected. I think I could still have a fun time going back to the old hardcore sounding Scowls, but I really dig the more melodic turn that they took on the new EP. Between that and Psychic Dance Routine, which I'd previously heard, it's clear that that's the direction they're going in. And honestly, I can get behind that sound a lot more than the earlier stuff. The earlier stuff isn't bad by any means if someone puts it on or I come across a Scowl album in the wild. I'm probably going to grab it if the price is right. But ultimately, I'm just excited to see where this band goes next. I don't know if we are in for another EP this year or if they're going to take the year to record another full length, but I'm definitely excited for the trajectory this band is on. Alright guys, thank you so much for checking this video out. I'm Emo Cat Dad and I appreciate you making it to the very end. Since you're still here, you might as well get in those comments down below and give me more bands or artists that I absolutely need to check out. Like I said earlier, Scowl was a suggestion from one of you guys. It was a band that I previously had some experience with, but not nearly enough, and I was excited to dive in, so put those bands back on my radar, even if you think I've heard of them. At worst, I'll just say, no, I love that band, or no, I've already heard that band, unfortunately too much to do it on this, but who knows what the future holds. Maybe I'm going to do something different. We're marching right towards episode number 100, so I hope you stick around for the ride, and the best way to do that is if you cut my wrists and hit subscribe. I'm your friendly neighborhood Emo Cat Dad signing off until tomorrow. I want to hear you sad.